that individual, whether they are the president of the United States or the homeless guy off the street, they are someone. They are people. You know, I mean, there's a picture of Noah in our house, and
that should be in everybody's house.
Also,
it probably is.
My mom's a little in love with Noah also.
Moms love me.
That's his target market.
Did that start with Dancing with the Stars?
No, it's been my entire life.
I remember hearing, you know, I mean, it wasn't uncommon to hear mortars or explosions or shots fired in the distance or something like that. But I remembered hearing an explosion and not thinking that much of it until we heard the radio call.
Welcome to Medic Mindset. I'm Ginger Locke. In this episode, we capture the story of Noah Galloway and Ashley Liebig. In 2005, he was an infantryman and she was a combat medic, both assigned to the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division serving in Iraq. When Noah was injured by a roadside bomb, Ashley, part of his medical team, started talking to him, and their conversation has lasted over a decade. They've both gone on to do amazing things in that time. Ashley is the clinical manager, flight nurse, and rescue specialist for Starflight in Travis County, Texas. Noah wrote a book about his recovery, and the title of his book tells you how he lives his life. It's called Living with No Excuses. When he was on Dancing with the Stars, all of America fell in love with him. And with each passing day, as we get to know more of him, we fall harder and harder. But in this episode, we barely mention his celebrity status. Because this is the first time Medic Mindset listeners have the honor to hear the patient's perspective, and there's so much to be learned from that vantage point. His stories will undoubtedly make you feel proud to be a medic. And some stories might ask you to do a gut check about the medic you plan to be for your patients. A quick note about this recording. This was recorded at Flightbridge Ed's inaugural Fast 18 Symposium. The conference was a huge hit. While successfully orchestrating their symposium, Eric Bauer and Mike Verkest generously loaned me their podcast recording equipment because my tiny setup isn't able to handle 2 guests. They asked for nothing in exchange. They just help me out because that's what they do. I'll add a link in the show notes to their website where they're already selling tickets for their next symposium called Fast 19. Being in the same room with Noah and Ashley is like being in a room with an old married couple. We talked for hours, and it took some time to edit because so much of the audio track was pure laughter. There was so much laughing. These two are beautiful as individuals, and they're only made more beautiful when they are in each other's company. Listen to the whole episode, because the gut check, at least for me, came toward the end when he describes what it was like to be completely dependent on his care provider while confused and in pain. Ashley, Noah, thank you so much for trusting me with the story of your friendship. Do you remember when you first met Ashley?
I do. It was in Iraq. We went to pick her up so she could come to our company. You know, you're in an infantry unit with a whole bunch of men. I get out and I see her. It's dark, but she's a female. Good enough. I said, I was like, hey, how's it going? You know, I'm introducing myself, turning the charm on. And then on the radio, it says, hey, can anybody get that female medic's roster number? And I grabbed the mic and was like, yeah, I got her right here. Jerry, the platoon leader, goes, oh, Galloway, you're with the female. Why am I not surprised? And it was over the radio. Everybody could hear it. And I'm like, oh, crap. Well, that just killed everything. So then I kind of just eased back. And that was when we met. And we brought her back to the potato factory.
Why do you call it potato factory?
It was a potato factory.
Oh.
Nothing about it made you feel like it was a potato factory. That was just what it was long before anyone took it over. Because we were not the first unit to be there, but it was a building that wasn't very big that the entire company fit in.
Do you remember the first time you met Noah?
It was absolutely pitch black dark, and I just remember being super nervous to be the only female medic and going out to a place that was known for being an awful aid station, and they had seen a lot of traumas and a lot of casualties, and my role was to take care of women and children. And so I think I was nervous, and then he came up all easy and confident, and then everyone laughed when his Lieutenant Edson said that over the radio. And
You went to take care of women and children.
that was my mission,
Yeah.
was women and children, just because of the culture and respecting, if they had injuries where we had to disrobe them, and that wasn't appropriate culturally. That was the goal of the mission at that time. And then I ended up taking care of our guys too.
How long did you guys know each other before his injuries?
That's a good question. I've wondered that too. It wasn't very long.
I think a day or two.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, it was close.
Like we met, and it was like
okay.
the day or two after.
So you didn't know him that well.
Not at all.
And then you got naked in front of her real quick. Real quick.
So I roll. Wasn't my best moment though. It's not how I would have chose it.
When I first met Ashley, so I met her on the internet first, and she was this larger-than-life international conference speaker, and I didn't know she was in Austin. I was just like, who's this Ashley Liebig? And forever I called her Liebig until someone corrected me. You were like, hey, you're a foam friend. And I was like, oh, she's in Austin. Oh my gosh, I had no clue. And then it turned out she was a Starflight person. And Starflight to me, so I worked 911 EMS, a county adjacent to Travis County, and we would call Starflight. Starflight to us was, and it still is, that meant everything was going to be all right, right? Like we had multiple patients. We were in a low resource environment. We had firefighters responding from home, volunteers. It was rural. Starflight represented comfort, safety. The sound of those rotor blades sounds good. So I was thrilled to meet you in person. You've been larger than life to me. The more I'm getting to know you and the more that you share about yourself, the more I realize, like, we're the same. We're the same. We're two people that have had crazy challenges, crazy life experiences. You're like an onion. You're slowly peeling those layers and sharing those with me. And you shared some stuff that you wrote that's been helping me figure out who you were, and I want to read some of it. This is talking about the men that you took care of. You said, I grew to love men that I barely knew. It was an overbearing mother kind of love. Were they drinking enough water? Had they been eating? When did they last get a fresh uniform? Had they gotten mail? Did they look sick or exhausted beyond the normal exhaustion? And my persistent inquiries landed me the title of mom.
It's funny. You were explaining what Starflight means. That's exactly who Ashley is. She's that person that you feel better when she's there. She's comforting. She's can be overbearing and controlling, but you accept it because it's who she is. As you were explaining Starflight, I mean, it's no surprise that that's how it feels with that whole entire group, because she's that.
Is that how you related to them as a mom figure? Is that how you would describe that relationship?
I think a mom or a sister, people always ask, how was that being with a bunch of guys? Were you nervous or uncomfortable? That couldn't be farther from the experience. I was so protected and so well loved and so safe. They looked after me like they would their mom or their little sister, almost to probably their detriment sometimes, and it got to be, I'd get up in the middle of the night and need to go find a porta potty, and I'd have somebody standing there, with a weapon with me. And so I was like, can I pee alone, please? So once I gathered that or had that reputation of the person that they could come to or talk to, they just started calling me mama.
Was there an age difference, or were you identical peer age group?
People there were from, 18 to in their 30s. I was at the time 26. So no, I guess I'm an old soul.
I don't bring up gender in this podcast.
To anybody listening, I am a man.
Because it kind of speaks for itself. Like, I just put a woman on and she speaks from her perspective. But I am curious how Ashley relates to peers. As a medic, I'm wondering if the medic piece is what made it maternal for those guys. Maybe I should ask you.
For a second, as a medic, not being a medic, you felt comfort with a medic there with you, because we had Harley that was there, and it was good to have him with us. Even though we were an infantry unit and the infantry has been men. And then we had this female with us. No one felt like she shouldn't be there. And what was great was we were a group of guys that weren't what you would imagine to be just a group of sexist men. There was a lot of respect, and she was very knowledgeable, very good medic. So there was never any question. If there was any question, just her being who she is changed the person's mind.
Yeah.
How about that?
So shortly after you met Noah, there was an event. Can you tell me the story?
We can't remember because, your memory plays that awful trick on you, but how many days it was. But it was December 19th.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing, it wasn't uncommon to hear mortars or explosions or shots fired in the distance or something like that. But I remembered hearing an explosion and then not thinking that much of it until we heard the radio call. The radio call was to the PA there at the time, and it's bad. It's really bad. He's bleeding. We got him out of the canal. And then I heard, which I don't think it necessarily registered at the time, it's Galloway. I know it didn't register at the time because I had just met 100 and something dudes that I had never known before in that amount of time. And so it didn't register who he was, but it did in the faces of other people. So I could see in the other medics and the PA that was there that this was going to be tough. They come squealing in, and I run out to the truck and open the door, and I see this mess of a human, just like he was in a pile, basically. I still didn't recognize him, and I wasn't necessarily looking at his face, and I think that was my moment when you talk about fight or flight or freeze, where I absolutely, it may have been for seconds, but froze. It's hands down the most terrified I've ever been of anything in my entire life. We were EMTBs with some advanced training. First time I've seen anyone in this condition before, so now I'm tasked with pulling him out of this truck. All I can see is these doe eyes of the other guys in the truck not knowing what to do, and I just grab him, and his arm was hanging by the tendons and ligaments. I remember thinking, what do I do with this? But his hand was still attached, intact. And so I just took his hand and I tucked it between my cheek and my shoulder and held my shoulder up like you would have, a phone, and pulled him out. We put him on a stretcher and we took him in and we called for a medevac and we worked the call.
Noah, was anybody else with you?
In the Humvee, there was Jerry Edson, and Davis was the gunner. Of course, I don't remember any of it. I know that everything hit my door. Jerry had his left wrist shattered and all the bulletproof glass cut his face up. Davis took some shrapnel to his legs. But I'm not just told. Obviously, I took the worst of it.
Yeah, because Jerry's still pretty hot, despite the cuts on his face.
Can we edit that out?
I'm sorry, you set me up for that.
So you don't remember?
I don't. I don't remember any of it. It's interesting though. I've been told that. I woke up in a sense. I was.
So we Noah didn't have any tourniquets on when he arrived to us.
He had him on his person, but not on his. They were not on his wounds or his limbs.
Correct. Yes. So he was in a canal for a while. So he's wet. He's full of blood. We got him in, cut his clothes off, put tourniquets on 3 of his 2 legs and 1 arm. Tried to get IV access. It was before the easy IO phase when we were still using the fast one. So I had trouble getting access.
Can I ask one question about that? Do you think now, in 2018, he would have arrived with tourniquets on?
I think about that a lot because I have to wonder if the human factor for the people that arrived with him was not the same. They weren't, yes, would I put tourniquets on someone if I came? But that's what I do for a living. They're infantry soldiers. Were their weapons clean and prepared to fire and all those things? 100%. But did they practice putting tourniquets on every day? No. And so if you don't have that deliberate practice, then is that the first thing when you see something that's horrific? When you see one of your mates in this scenario, is that what your brain goes to? And I don't think so.
We weren't doing a lot of injuries. We had casualties. And I think there was this thought that I was done.
Okay.
I think that's in their defense, because we knew to put tourniquets on, but I think in their defense it was, oh no, like this was another one.
Yeah.
Once they said they struggled to get me out of the vehicle, up the embankment, and then into a Humvee. In the Humvee is when I was told by one of the drivers years later that I started coughing up blood. And then he yelled to the gunner to turn my head. And even that gunner was a little like shocked. So I think there was a moment, there was a while where they just thought, let's just get this body back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think about, like, this was 2005. Mm-hmm. I think about that year to 2018. I think we've built some more reflexes now for tourniquets. I think it's more reflexive, but maybe not. That was before, Easy IO. It was a different time with trauma. Like,
yeah.
It's this wartime it informed us so much about trauma care. So you put tourniquets on?
There were probably 4 or 5 of us taking care of Noah. A PA was at his head, and then I was just to his right side, and then the other guys were at the legs. So we got tourniquets on. They worked on his access, and I got stuff ready. I figured we would intubate him. So his face is covered in blood, and his jaw is absolutely broken. He's missing teeth. He's a disaster, but he's fighting. He's still awake to some degree, moaning. So I was helping the PA get airway stuff together. They still couldn't put him out. He's still flailing and fighting. And so I did the only thing that I knew how to do to hush he's going to die. If the medevac doesn't hurry up, a lot of swearing, a lot of tourniquet this, he's bleeding to death, he's going to die. The only thing I could think to do was to talk to him. And so I did, and said probably a million stupid things. For sure, something about he must buy me drinks when we get back because he was bleeding all over my boots, and that's rude. And he was going to be okay. And I was lying because I thought I was certain he was dead. And everything was going to be fine. And I'd come visit him in Alabama, and this was all going to be okay. And he was tough. And I just kept talking to try and cover up the sounds of the things that were scary.
And you told me this was your first call.
Ever.
I find that really interesting that you had the wherewithal to be externally focused on Noah and think about his experience instead of your own, and that you were talking to him.
I don't know if it was me talking to Noah or me talking to me, because it absolutely, hands down, was terrifying. It was the worst thing I had ever seen. I could feel the anguish in the room from everyone else. I knew that I was absolutely powerless in that situation to do anything. And so that's the only thing that I knew how to do, was to try and make those moments better. Those are all really scary words. Bleeding to death, tourniquet, gonna die, can't get access, medevac won't come.
So what is the first thing you remember?
I remember waking up briefly in Germany, and it was Christmas Eve. I was clueless to where I was, how I got there, what was going on. As I was, medicated and in and out of it, and just, I had this dream that, because we were dealing with so many roadside bombs, I had a dream that someone said these explosions are so hot that it can fuse your bones together. So as I laid in the hospital, my jaw was wired shut, but I didn't know it.
Why was it wired shut? My
jaw was shattered. So they reconstructed it, and then it was wired shut.
We have to pause for a second because my boss is calling me.
So Ashley asked us to pause. She kind of told us to pause. And Noah and I, we're not really the kind to be told what to do. You'll hear her come back in after we've had a chance to talk about her when she wasn't in the room. Do you think your brain registered her talking to you?
Well, I mean, it wasn't too long after we reconnected because she was sent back to where battalion was. And once she was there, she had access to the internet, reached out to me while I was at Walter Reed. Once she did, I knew that someone took pictures to document things. So I said, are there any pictures of y'all doing first aid on me?
You wanted to see that?
Well, she was hesitant to even say that there was. Then, I stayed on her and she said, yes, there are, but I don't know if you're ready to see those. I mean, I'm still in a hospital bed, mouth still wired shut. And I said, yes, I want to see them. So she emails me these 3 pictures. And yeah, I mean, my arm is off. Both my legs are torn up. My jaw is shattered.
I saw the picture in your book.
Yeah. Well, all I saw was the fact that my clothes were cut off, and it wasn't a good look. And my email back to her was, I was in the water, and obviously it was cold. And her response was, you're an idiot. Your body was trying to protect the organs, and all the blood was, because it was bad. I've seen bad, and this was horrible. And that's all I could focus on. It was, I was like, oh my God, not only is this picture out there, but this female sent it to me. But anyway, fast forwarding, we become very close friends, obviously. One day we were talking, and she said something about Alabama, and I said, yeah, you told me the story about you had to go to a bachelorette party in like Mobile or something like that. And I was just telling her these stories, and she was like, Noah, we've never talked about that. She said, that was the stuff I was rambling when they were working on you. Obviously, there was something happening. I don't remember anything, but one night I was falling asleep. This was about 4 years after my injury, and there was this brief moment of just having this, I hate flashback, sounds corny, but this quick moment of remembering like I was fighting for my life. Something about it felt so real that I think that was part of it. I think it was because they say your mind, well, I've been told, can protect you from things. There's nothing I think is protecting me. I think it just doesn't remember. I would love to know it. I don't like that there are several days that are erased from my mind.
Mm-hmm. You think that's why you wanted to see the picture?
I wanted to see it.
You want all the info.
I do. I have pictures of the Humvee, and after it sat in the water for a long time, even when they pulled it out, blood was still pouring out of it.
Dang. Yeah.
There's a lot. She mentioned that she felt like this guy's not going to live. The PA, Captain Segui, told me years later, he said, yeah, your brain went without blood for so long, I knew you'd never walk and talk again. I was just hoping to save your life. The fact that it came through the other side, they eventually were able to get me to, a camp outside of Baghdad where they worked on me there to Germany, and Germany to D.C. But even in Germany, apparently my parents said that they were hesitant to say I was going to make it to D.C. to Walter Reed. And then they said, you got to fly to Germany. And my parents got everything ready. And the day they were going to fly to Germany, they said, never mind, he's stable enough. We can get him to Walter Reed. From my understanding, if they were going to leave me in Germany and fly my family to Germany, it was basically for my parents to have their goodbyes. And then suddenly I was good enough to fly.
And in the months following, as you started to recover, what was that like?
As I laid in the hospital bed at Walter Reed, my parents were there, my sisters came up. I'm sure at one point a doctor may have explained it to me. I don't remember it. The only thing I remember was my mom explaining to me my injuries, that I'd lost my left arm above the elbow, my left leg above the knee. My right leg was severely injured. I had some injuries to my right hand. My jaw was shattered. My mouth was wired shut.
So she's telling you that you didn't already know that?
No, I was clueless. Take a step back. I was telling you about when I woke up briefly in Germany, and I had that dream that someone said that the explosions could fuse your bones together. As I laid in the hospital bed, I thought my jaw had fused shut. And with my one hand, I was trying to pry my mouth open and didn't even notice that there was not a left hand doing anything. I was so out of it. So it was a lot of in and out. I remember the morning they flew me out. And I do remember there were 3 Air Force medics that rolled me out to the bird to fly out to go from Germany to D.C. In the vehicle going out to the plane, there was an old gentleman that was talking out of his head. Because of his rambling, I, for a moment, forgot that I was hurting, and I had this strange look on my face. And one of the medics told me that he was dying, and they were flying him back to the States to be with his family. And I just listened to him talk, and it distracted me. And I remember it was 2 females and a male that took care of me, and I could be sitting at a table with them right now and wouldn't recognize them. But they were so caring that, I mean, I fell in love with them. I'd have married any one of them at that moment, you know. Either the 2 females or the male. It didn't matter. I was in love. They were so good to me. And then I remember the moment they said, "We're about to land. You're about to go back to sleep." And they gave me something, and then I was out and woke up as my parents were walking in.
Do you know who they are?
I don't.
See, they have no clue. Probably today, wherever they are, they don't know how much that means to you.
You know, and I've had the opportunity to speak at events. I think I was in Chicago, and I spoke to several hundred trauma nurses, doctors. I explained to them, I said, you know, you may never have a patient that ends up on the cover of Men's Health, goes on Dancing with the Stars, but I will tell you that we remember you, even if we do not know what your faces look like. Never saw you, we are appreciative. And the opportunity to say that to all these men and women that do what they do meant a lot for me, and then the response was huge afterwards. And in fact, because of that, I had a lady reach out to me a week later, said that she had 3 separate doctors reach out to her and said, "We've got to get Noah in contact with everyone that was working on him, from Baghdad to Germany to D.C. So I have a conference call in a couple of weeks saved in my calendar. Well, we're going to be on that call. And part of it is, she explained to me that it's for them to understand what can be improved, what worked, but I see it as an opportunity to say thank you. Because, I mean, me and Ashley and our friendship, I mean, yeah, we fight like cats and dogs, but the love is strong, and I tell her constantly how proud I am of her. And not only, you know, for what she did for me, but what she continues to do and who she's become as this powerful person that is just passionate about what she does.
And what I know, but the listener doesn't know, is that you guys in this process have a friendship now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's more than a friendship. We're a family.
So y'all are in regular contact?
Yes.
See, I think that's something unique about the military medicine, is that in the civilian world, we're not staying in contact with our patients, but you guys started as family.
Yeah, I mean, because, well, I mean, how often do you have a patient that's hanging around the hospital before they're injured? So, I mean, yeah, so there's that you know your medics. So there is something built, but uniquely, we only knew each other for 2 days. But because we were able to reconnect, I mean, her daughter and my oldest son are the same age. You know, there's so much that, you know, we know so much about each other, and because we've stayed in contact, and I think we've been good for each other.
So how many years?
12 years.
You feel like you know each other like siblings?
Yes. She stepped out for a second, but she will, I guarantee when she's back in here, she will say the same thing. We have a limit of how much time we can spend together.
Uh-huh.
And we're gonna be at each other's throats. And I have 3 sisters that I am very close to, and we have a limit. As we were coming to do this podcast, we're walking down the hallway, and her voice gets real loud and says hey to somebody. I was like, oh, you're so much like Jennifer, my oldest sister. Same way. Just this dominant personality.
That dominant personality is why we're talking right now. She kicked ass. She took care of you.
Yep. She still does. And then it always makes me, when she started getting into speaking, and I do a lot of it, the first time she reached out to me and was asking for my advice on things, I remember that was a huge moment for me. You know, I've been through that with my older sister too. The first time she called and said, hey, I want to ask you for some advice. It showed that we had grown as people, and we both have something to offer. To be here now in Nashville, and we're going to do a speech together. And when she brought it up, she was like, this would be great, but we have different styles. She rehearses her speech. It's prepared. I'm a storyteller. I'm off the cuff.
She told me that about you.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I've got it dialed in. This is what I'm going to do.
She has no idea what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say.
It's always very terrifying because I never know what he's going to say.
I warn the audience beforehand. I'm like, hey, don't know what's going to happen. It may be awe-inspiring. It may be crap, but it will be genuine.
So we were talking about how you guys have stayed in touch.
You missed all the sweet things I said about you.
The best relationship analogy we have is siblings. Do you feel like that matches with how you perceive your relationship?
Am I the bossy older sister in this scenario?
I did compare you to my older sister, Jennifer.
Then yes.
So, yes.
That is an accurate assessment. I would say Noah, over the years, has just been my person. For people who know what that's about, he's been my person. So he's the person that when something really great happens, you want to let him know. When something really horrific happens, you also want to let him know. He's the person that you call with the questions or the I need advice or I just need to be really mad or whatever it is. And it generally never on my end, I never get any really good advice. He's not great at that, but he always makes me laugh.
What was that about?
You're terrible.
So
you're terrible.
So
I know, but you're terrible at advice. He's the worst at giving advice.
No, you're horrible at taking advice.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yes.
Maybe. You're the worst at
the
advice.
limit I told you about, we've reached it.
No, we still have 24 hours. We have a 48-hour limit. We can only be together like 48 hours twice a year before we get in a fight. Maybe I take that back. I
No, it's
retract
too late.
it. No,
it's way too late.
He's really bad at it. He's just bad at it.
Oh, my God.
You give terrible advice.
You seem all right to me.
Thank you.
I didn't say he's not wonderful.
You said you give bad advice. Can we play it back?
Maybe it's not that he gives bad advice. He maybe just doesn't give it at all. I think that's usually it. He changes the subject with something very quick like, it'll all work out and it'll be fine. And then he tells you some story that makes you laugh for like an hour. And so you forget.
Which is probably, Ashley, exactly what somebody like you needs.
Yes, it is.
You're
100%.
welcome.
You're welcome. I'm just being honest here. It is exactly what I need. It's why he's my person. Because I don't want to dissect every thing about every decision I've made or the thing I said or the what I did or whatever. And so he just shuts it down and we move on to something that is fun and funny. And so that's why you're my person.
No. You know, when you're out of the room, the one thing I said was like, you always there for me, and you have this knowledge that I cannot touch. I don't know anything about. But then remember when you had to give this big speech and you wanted to prepare, and you called me and we talked about it. I gave you advice on that.
Okay, all right, one time in 12 years. I apologize.
Can we cut our mic off?
You're super good.
Nope.
Can you go back outside?
It was so nice in here. It was positive.
Yes.
It was pleasant.
I can't wait for her to hear this back. She's going to feel like a jerk.
That is untrue. Untrue.
So somebody that's never met Noah, okay? They walk in the door and they say, quick, like, tell me about him. Give me a paragraph. Describe him. They don't know that he was in the military. They don't know what he's survived, how he's recovered.
Gosh, that's really tough. For me, the military and injuries and none of that defines him. It really doesn't even occur to me because I've seen him do amazing things. When I think of Noah, he is an amazing dad. He's the best. He's got amazing kids and he's an amazing dad. That is hands down the first thing that I think about. He's a great storyteller. He's an incredible orator. He's a good person. All of this sort of celebrity status and all the things that have happened, the parts that you don't get to know about Noah are the parts that make him Noah to me. It's the kid's parent who calls from the hospital and says, hey, my kid has to have his leg amputated. Can you come by? And he goes. All the things that are the Noah to the rest of the world are not to me. They're the things that I've had really, I guess, an honor to get to experience. I got to be with him at the hospital in Nashville to visit the little boy before he goes to surgery. And those are the things that make him who he is. He has one of the kindest hearts of anyone that I know.
And as you're reassuring other people that are going to have amputations, and you're telling them, like, you're okay, like, this doesn't define you. Is that true?
Yes.
Is that your truth?
It is. Not with a child, it's different, but I've met with adults that have, had an injury and they were amputated, and I've been truthful with them. I'm like, this is going to suck in the beginning, but with every dark day you have, it's going to get better. And then with each passing day, each week, each month, each year, it just gets easier and easier. What I've had the privilege of experiencing, of being in the public eye, she mentioned that time she was with me and it was Children's Hospital in Nashville. The child was young, but the parents needed to see someone walk in with an injury that has been successful, that is physically fit, that as a parent, my parents went through it. My father's missing his arm, but here I was missing an arm and a leg. They were terrified of what was going to happen to me. And so for those parents to see that there's more, that's been the greatest gift that I've been given to be able to show, because those moments feel incredible, to feel like you've actually done something good.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you kind of advise them, like, there's going to be dark days.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? What was that for you?
Well, I tell them because I want them to know that I don't want to sugarcoat it, because then when they have those struggles, they're like, oh, I was told some days are going to be rough. Because if you don't realize the reality to it, well, then it could hit you, it can blindside you, and you think that you're kind of alone in it. I struggled a lot. I think, in my depression I went through, denial was what I suffered the longest. I refused. I knew I was injured, but I refused to accept that there was an issue. And because of that, I didn't get any help. I didn't do anything to change. And that was several years of darkness for me.
And Ashley was there with you?
We were friends, and we've never talked about it, but I know there had to have been moments for her where she was just probably at a loss in what to do. And I don't know how much she knew of how bad it was, because even though I was closer to her than anyone, I was bad about doing what you read in what you have, the notes you have in front of you. She talks about putting on this front and being Wonder Woman. I was Superman. I portrayed myself that way and didn't want anyone to see my weaknesses, which I looked back and was like, that was the dumbest thing I ever did. Because, when it comes to depression, I say this to people all the time, you think you're strong by taking it on alone, but that is pure weakness, because all you do is you let it own you. And coming out with it and getting help, doing something about it, that takes real strength. And I didn't have that for a long time.
I think you said that you've never talked with her about that.
No, I don't think, I don't know how much, we haven't really talked in depth about it. Because when I was reading what she wrote, and it was, she wrote this incredible piece about, the things she went through and the struggles she had, and how she was going and talking about mental health, but she wasn't taking care of herself. That was exactly what I was doing. I was giving speeches and was BSing my way through them. And I see that when I read the part where she said she was Wonder Woman, I was like, oh my God, here I was. I thought I was Superman. I was always this protector. And I didn't want to lose that. I'd lost 2 of my limbs. I'd lost the ability to protect, and I didn't want to lose the image of it. And it took time for me to realize, no, there is more to offer, but I can't do it until I take care of myself. And it was actually realizing that it was my kids that were my motivators. It was the thought of my children that was the motivation to go, okay, I got to get back up. I got to push a little harder. One thing led to another. It was like, eventually it all turned around. My goals were set on being the best father I could be. Everything I do revolves around them. And that's what got me up and going. And I think that, as close as I was to Ashley, I don't know how much we talked about it, because I think there was a lot that we were going through at the exact same time, and neither one of us talking about it. Would you say that's?
I think intuitively I knew, but Noah was always so content to be, everything's fine, it's no big deal, I got it.
But she gave me that. You gave me that. She was there to just let me know she was there. Like, I didn't have to tell her everything. No, I think you're exactly right. Like, which makes me, let's take a step back to my not giving good advice. She was there for me to not really give me advice, but let me know she was there and make me feel good. Kind of like when you call and ask for advice and I make you feel good.
I know. This is the point.
Oh, was that the point you were making?
Oh, full circle. This relationship is exhausting.
I have a question I wanted to ask, probably Ashley. And the question is, I remember my first acute call where the patient was alive, but ended up not living, right? They were alive with us, but then died. I was lucky enough that the spouse to this patient happened to work in healthcare, and so I could talk to the spouse and follow up. And I followed up. I wanted to know all of it. I wanted to know every detail, that they became an organ donor and that the family flew in and they got to be at the bedside. And I've attributed that to the fact that it was my first acute call. But I think the other piece was that I had access to that spouse of the patient. Why do you think you've made the commitment to stay so close to Noah?
I think at first we talked over. I actually sent my cousin who was was in the Navy and worked for the hospital in DC. I sent her to check on him, and for me, it was more of a responsibility to the unit. These guys are crushed. He's the guy's guy. Everybody loves him. He's Galloway. He's fun. He's easygoing. He's the best. Everybody loves him. He's hilarious. He tells great jokes. And they were devastated. And so I wanted to be able to be the one that gave him the news that he's okay. He's going to be okay. You guys are all going to be okay. If Noah's okay, we're all going to be okay. And then we talked on the phone a few times while I was still in Iraq. And when we finally were able to email, we emailed back and forth. There was just this human being that had just lost all of these things. His life was completely changed, and yet he still had this sort of outlook, and he could still tell this joke, and he could still be this charming guy, and he could still, and so I guess I was amazed by that. I don't know if it's because he was the first patient. Before I was in flight nursing, I worked in the cardiothoracic ICU, and I have lots of patient families that I have been, I went to funerals and I'm part of their lives, and I've been indoctrinated as family. But there was just something about Noah that was what you want to be. You want to have this optimism. You want to have this, it's going to be okay. And this sort of attitude that I can do this. There's nothing that he can't do. Nothing. What did you say the other day that was something that you couldn't do? And I was baffled that, that's going to make me crazy now. It was something completely dumb.
Being a trapeze artist.
It was something completely ridiculous. I can't remember what it was. And I remember thinking, he can run marathons and do Tough Mudders, but he can't iron or whatever the thing was. Maybe it was folding clothes.
I can fold clothes.
Can you?
Yes. I don't.
I've seen your suitcase before.
Yeah, I don't. I didn't before I was
Okay,
injured.
that's enough. Now back to the point. I think that he is a personality that I would want in my life and to be part of my world. It wasn't about this horrific experience anymore. There is some level probably of guilt that I feel like maybe I could have done more. Maybe if we had done XYZ, he would still have the other arm, or maybe he would still have the other leg, or if we had been faster, or if we had moved this way, or maybe I moved his arm weird when I took him out, or all of those kinds of things that has taken, a decade to convince myself that it wasn't my fault. But I think that if that were eliminated from the equation, he would still be my person.
You have to be Ashley's person.
It's a tough job. I think it's going to get me into sainthood, honestly.
As if you haven't sacrificed enough.
I know. God, dog.
Tell me about your tattoos.
I have several different ones, but Ashley and I share a tattoo that
Separate bodies. His has more muscles than mine.
I have the outline of a phoenix, and she has the coloring of the phoenix. And we actually had a friend of ours that was in Iraq, Chris, that was in Iraq with us and lost his leg and has injuries and became a tattoo artist. And we decided to go together to visit him. And we had this great idea of getting tattoos together. And it was, who better to do it?
And now we're branded for life in not small fashion, but they're giant.
Yeah, I lie about what it's about to other people.
Same.
I can't tell if y'all are kidding or not.
I tell people it was supposed to be like the eagle on a Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit.
You brought up the guilt, and I don't understand survivor guilt. I don't know why I don't understand that. There was a medic who I hired at the service where I worked, and then I left that service to go teach. He ended up dying in an ambulance crash. I remember thinking, I should probably feel guilty about this. And I actually didn't. I felt many emotions, but guilt didn't come up. What is that? Explain it to me.
Survivor guilt is actually defined, it's part of a post-traumatic stress thing, right? So the way they define it is why them and not me. And for me, that was never a thing. I was not in the vehicle with Noah. I was not, so I couldn't, it's different if someone is injured or killed standing next to you, right? For me, the guilt as a clinician is what could I have done differently? So the survivor guilt is the would have, could have, should have, and the replay of what that looked like. So it also was sort of surreal to have people return to you in shoeboxes, right? So teeth and a wedding ring and a piece of a weapon being the only remains of someone that you knew. And so that sort of, there's this, I think they're two different things. There's this acute, oh my God, this thing happened and it's horrific and thank God it's not me. And then the guilt of, you're a terrible person for thinking, thank God it's not me. But for me, it has always been I should have done more. I should have acted. The guys that have come home injured that we're friends with, I should have checked in. I should have called. I should have been better for them. I should have been more for them. I should have been there. Those are for me, that's when people say survivor guilt, that's what I feel. I should have known. I should have known that they're in this terrible place and I should have done more, but I was selfishly invested in my own life. And so I didn't do more. And so I think that's some of the guilt for these guys is an intense amount of guilt. What do I do? And how can I do it? And how do I lend help? And how do I offer something to them? And in the absence of that, when something bad happens to them, I think, what if you had done? Would it have made a difference? Would you have changed the outcome? And the same thing goes for patients. Not all patients, but I think in my career, there's been a few patients where I've thought, could you have done that differently? And would you have done that differently? And probably not, but there's this intense feeling of, I wish I would have said something different or been something different, and maybe I would have been better for that family, or, it's that fear of just not being enough. I think we all have a healthy fear of not being enough for someone when it's there, when you need someone to be enough.
Knowing that there's many medics listening to this, any message to them?
Well, for me, I mentioned earlier, the relationship we have, and we got to meet before, and then those, while she was out of the room, I was talking about the people that worked on me in different stages, and some I vaguely remember and some I never saw, never will. I like to be the person to openly say, even if your patient that you worked on, at whatever stage they were in, you may never see again, you're thought of. Because I'm thankful for every single person that worked on me.
Except for the ones that were mean to you.
Can I tell my story? Can I say what I'm saying?
I think that's an important part. You remember also the ugly people.
Yes, there was. I avoided that during this, when I was talking earlier, there was.
Why in the world would somebody be mean to you?
I don't know, but
how does that even happen?
It was burned in my brain.
Like, he still has rage about it.
Yeah.
Look how red his face is when he's thinking about it. He's so mad right now.
But to those other people.
To the people that no, but I think it's an important part of that's an important part of.
Did they know they were being mean?
Well, so when I mentioned about those two females and male, the Air Force medics that worked on me, and just how kind they were. I don't know what they were doing. They may have even sucked at their job, but they made me feel comfortable, because here I was, completely clueless and in the dark of what was going on, and terrified because I didn't know what was happening. They calmed me down. They made me feel comfortable. And to have someone that was not having a good day themselves and wanted to tell me that because I was hitting the nurse call button out of confusion and scared while I was at Germany and I was being rude, I didn't know where I was. That is just inconsiderate and angered me.
And I don't want to reframe it for you, but I wonder if it was ignorance, and that's why it's so important for you to talk about it, so all these clinicians can, they were ignorant to the fact of how it was affecting you.
So some of what Noah has taught me over time, just through sharing stories and telling about his experience, and those things have been what has guided and shaped me as a nurse. That boils my blood, that you could have a confused patient not know where they are, not be able to communicate, to be in pain, to be afraid, and to be told that you're disruptive or being annoying or disrespectful or whatever that was. That boils, as a nurse, that boils my blood to the core. So when I'm teaching nursing students, I always remind them about putting yourself in that other person's shoes, right? That person is a person, and there's someone else's person. Just as much as you love your brother or you love your dad or your mom or whatever, that individual, whether they are the president of the United States or the homeless guy off the street, they are someone. They are people. And we don't get to do that. We don't have the luxury of acting like that. That's not part of being a professional, as a paramedic, as a nurse, as any healthcare practitioner. So to be ugly to a patient in their darkest hour, to me, it's beyond the 7 deadly sins, right? It's the worst thing I can imagine. Those concepts were framed for me by Noah, and living through that experience secondhand.
I remember it so vividly. It was Christmas Eve. I didn't realize it was Christmas Eve, but I heard kids in the hallway singing Christmas carols. And I was in pain. And I remember holding the button for morphine, and I guess somebody had told me, but I'm hitting it, nothing, and I'm hitting the nurse call button, and this male nurse comes in and says, and it's funny because I don't remember much about Germany, but I remember him saying, we were away from our families. There are kids here singing Christmas carols to us, and you were being rude. And I read his name tape, and I repeated it over and over and over and over until I fell asleep.
So imagine that. This few sentences that you say to someone in their care defines how they view healthcare for the rest of their life. That's the message that I share with nurses and with medics. And it's this tiny little glimpse of what we are, and you become that for that person. That guy devastated who we are as a people and as a community and our reputation with his lack of professionalism. This guy is 4 days out from an injury in horrific pain, and he's going to say that? So in your weakest moment as a provider, you do not have the luxury of being that person to someone that you're caring for, ever. Ever, ever. There's no excuse, ever.
You mad you weren't there?
Oh, my God. No, I'm actually really grateful because I would be in prison.
You know, it reminds me of something I read once.
Oh, we're about to be enlightened.
Insurance companies do a lot of research, you know, because it costs them money. They can save themselves money. And they found that doctors with good bedside manners get sued the least. And a doctor that doesn't have good bedside manner, even if it's not his fault, is more likely to get sued. Because I read a specific time that they said that they interviewed somebody where it was the doctor's fault, and they wanted to sue the surgeon. And they said, well, actually, it was the doctor's fault. They're like, oh, no, I like him. And they didn't want to sue him.
You said that, Noah, earlier, many hours ago. You said they may have sucked as like nurses and medics or whatever, but they were so nice to me, and that's what you needed.
I did. That's all I needed.
That's all you needed.
Yes, comfort. Because, you know, I didn't know where I was, what was going on. And to be in a hospital bed after an injury, it is terrifying.
With your jaw wired shut?
Yeah.
Your teeth fused together. Yeah. You're...
Yeah, I was so confused.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry. That it's embarrassing. Like it's
the good thing is I know people like Ashley.
Yeah. It's a good thing to share. I can't wait to hear y'all's talk.
We can't wait to hear it either.
I mean, Ashley knows what she's going to say. She already has the outline.
Ish.
Well, then she doesn't know what I'm going to say and how she's going to recover from it.
If we're basing anything off of this podcast, it may or may not go very well.
What random facts is Noah going to say? Do you know that Sesame Street was the #1 children's show for 3 decades? Yeah, it was finally it took Blue's Clues to take them off the top, if you were wondering.
Are you making that up right now?
No, that is real.
Gosh, so when will y'all see each other again in person?
We have no idea. No clue.
So the friendship isn't dependent on that FaceTime.
No. And we can go a couple weeks without talking. And it's probably good that we do that. Mm-hmm. It's safer. Mm-hmm. But then nothing changes.
Do you ask her for medical information?
No.
She's a nurse.
I know, but I don't want that advice from her. No, I mean, I'll tell you, just in random conversation, I'll tell her something going on, and good grief, it's like you think I was dying.
Okay.
No one knows what's going on with Noah Galloway except for Ashley.
Okay. Sometimes you are hard-headed and you get very, very, very sick and you are not interested in listening to anyone and you just need to go to a doctor and get something handled. Like you need your tonsils out.
To take something that will put me asleep for several days and I wake up and I'm fine. And it seems to work most of the time.
He needs his tonsils taken out.
But you know what I do for a living? I talk. And with the recovery...
It'll be like a week. Also, he's afraid of pain.
A what? Golly. I am not.
I know you're not. I'm just kidding. You're totally not. We ran a marathon together. It was a disaster because I didn't train and was moderately hungover.
And cried. She cried.
No, I think I cried after I threw up at mile 11 or so. But I couldn't slow down because if I did anything less than run at Noah's speed with that kangaroo leg, he would fall down.
I couldn't walk. Yeah, it got to where like I'd try to walk with her and I'd fall and I was tightening up. So then at one point, it's like mile 17, she started walking and I had to zigzag on the road. So basically I ran more than a marathon.
Oh my God, yes, you're a hero. You ran more than a marathon. But he's running this entire marathon with a sore on his leg. So every time that prosthetic is touching the ground, he has a sore on his leg, which I admire now in retrospect. I wanted to actually murder him at the time because it was terribly painful for me because I just thought, oh, mind over matter. You can totally run a marathon without training, and that's not true. So he's actually pretty tough.
Had to turn her down.
Pretty good at pain.
She is loud.
Shut up.
She's very loud.
You are pretty tough.
He is pretty tough.
And good looking. We forgot that part. I've sensed it, but I didn't know if the listener could see what was on your faces.
You sound like such an asshole right now.
I love y'all.
We love you too.
I love me too.
I knew it was coming. I knew it. Like I almost said it with him. I know that was coming.
You knew what he was going to say.
Yes, I know.
You knew he was going to say, "I love me too."
Yes. This is explicit rated. Actually, did you know that Ginger has an explicit rated
I know.
podcast.
When she cussed earlier, I was like, "Crap." I really want to share this, but my audience is. I am G-rated.
I will edit it to be G-rated.
Okay, thank you.
And it'll be like beep 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 beep.
Something wrong. There's a lot of beeping going on.
So much editing. Poor Ginger.
No, it's going to be great. You guys are lovely. Y'all are an old married couple.
Yeah, she's very annoying.
I'm okay. Alrighty. Okay. Yes. Actually, that sadly is not the first time that we've heard that.
That you're annoying? Well, I'm sure a lot of you.
Oh my God. You're a terrible person. Yes, but this is the nature of our relationship and it is super fun. And at the end of the day, he's still my person despite how annoying he is and how good looking he thinks he is.
Oh. Hey, for a minute, I thought you were going, yeah.
I know.
Oh, thinks he is.
I can edit that. I can make it.
Yeah.
How good looking.
What did I say about your driving on the way here today?
That you were doing your best not to complain.
See, I was making an attempt. He did almost kill us 3 times on the way
Oh my
here.
God. No, I did not.
Oh my God, you totally did. 3 times.
But did we?
We did not die.
So you're welcome.
So somewhere there's a room of people
Yeah, we should go.
that want to shake y'all's hands
yeah,
and tell
we
you
should
how
go.
wonderful you are.
We could talk to Ginger all night about
I'm
how great
enjoying
you
this.
are.
You
I
are
know.
enjoying it?
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Isn't she the best
yes.
ever?
I like that's why I want this. I want to share this.
Yeah.
We were supposed to be really well behaved, and this could be our document of like our friendship.
I think we're
old.
documenting it factually.
Yeah, I know, but factually is not pretty.
I just hear the soothing sound of my own voice.
It is soothing. It's so humble, also. Oh, she unplugged me. Now I'm just isolated.
That may work.
How's it sound now?
I can't hear anything.
I know.
You just, you just undid it, so now I'm done.